Now we're turning to reflect on the Australian Open, the first Grand Slam of the tennis year. To do so, we have Conor Niland in studio. You're very welcome back.
Thanks, Joe. Good to be
Let's work our way backwards then. So Novak Djokovic has won the Australian Open in 2008, 2011, 12, 13, 15, 16, 19, and you were brave enough to predict he would win it in 2020.
Yeah.
How did you see this coming?
Yeah, I went with the 1 seed in the women's and 2 seed in the men's, and Barty let me down. Actually, she lost in semis. But yeah, look, it's his 8th title. I think Aussie Open for him is a bit like Rafa at the French. The court just sort of seems to suit him that little bit better movement-wise. The way the ball bounces just seems to be in his strike zone every single time. But look, he had a tough battle with Team. Started off great, and then Team obviously went up and got some momentum on him, but he clawed it back. And 4th and 5th set, he was sort of always out in front. But Team has pushed him there, and it's looking like he might be one to make a breakthrough in 2020.
And he has beaten Djokovic before. He wouldn't have any psychological hang-ups over playing Djokovic. But Djokovic won the first, as you said, and then Team took the 2nd and 3rd. At that sense, at that point, was it still your sense Djokovic was going to come back?
I'd like to say yeah, but I thought Team maybe had it at that point. Team, ATP did a video with Team over Christmas, and his off season in Miami was frightening in terms of the intensity of the work he was putting in and the hours, and he's known for his work rate, and he just looked really good. But Djokovic is just a superior tennis player, and he's a little bit better on that court. But like we've seen now, Team takes him to 5 sets in the final of Aussie. Medvedev took Nadal to 5 sets in the final of the US Open. Their Team was in the French Open final last year, so that cohort that is behind the big 3 are starting to make their move now. The guy with the trophy at the end of the tournament is still one of the 3 lads, but naturally it's starting to happen.
Yeah. There was a slightly kind of ugly incident. I don't know. I don't want to overstate things either, where Djokovic was given back-to-back time violations, and then he walked off the court and he tapped the umpire's shoes a few times and said thank you, and then he sat down and he started almost... so he's sitting there, and the umpire is obviously looking deadpan ahead, hasn't reacted to Djokovic touching his shoes overly, and then Djokovic, as he's taking out his banana and gluten-free food, starts shouting up at him, "You made yourself famous in this match. Great job," especially in the second one. "Great job. You made yourself famous. Well done, man." And this, we see it in football sometimes. Referees really hate sarcastic clapping. This was kind of nasty-ish sarcastic jabbing at the umpire.
For a guy with whatever 17 slams and he's 32 years old, it sort of sounded like something you'd say when you're 16 to an umpire at a junior tournament. Oh, well done. Aren't you a big man?
You made yourself famous.
Yeah, I mean, come on. There's a shot clock. It's been brought in. It's 30 seconds or 25 seconds between points, and when it gets to 0, the umpire is going to tell you that it's a code violation. Like, there's no grey area here whatsoever. A couple of points later, Djokovic was a little bit slow again. Umpire went in again and said, "You've lost your first serve, second serve." So Djokovic went up, and as he walked past him, tapped him on the foot, touching an umpire or an umpire's chair. It's a little bit of a breach there. It doesn't look good. So he's got to let himself down a bit.
He has a petulant streak, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does, and he's sort of always been. He's always been the third wheel a little bit with the Nadal, Federer. He's always felt that, and at the start of his career, he was on a bit of a charm offensive, and the crowds never really warmed to him. And even though he's won this tournament 8 times, and he should be loved in Australia, he's not really, and I think he knows it now. But yeah, he's got that little bit of. Not bitterness, but there's something there, and he would just love to win that race to the Slam title as well. Like Federer's at 20, Nadal's at 19, he's at 17. He's really close, and there's nothing better than he'd love to end that debate.
Because I do remember when he first came on the scene, and there were videos shot in the locker rooms of him doing impersonations of other players and different characters, and as you said, a real charm offensive. And I fully suspect he thought he would be embraced and loved, and that this would go down a storm, and people would think he was funny and charming and all this stuff. And for whatever reason, I have it as well. There's a
disconnect
there. Yeah.
And, like, it's not like Federer and Nadal or Murray have never had these kind of on-court incidences where, you know, a chink in the arm or mentally, and they look, you know, they maybe don't look like they're totally in control, and they can shout at their box and all that. That's happened. And Nadal, when he gets a time violation, is not exactly taking it lying down. So, but they still have maintained that popularity. But Djokovic, yeah, he hasn't managed to do it for whatever reason. And he's been around a hell of a long time and winning an awful lot, but it just hasn't translated.
Yeah, it's a curious thing. There are just some intangibles sometimes with people, aren't there?
Yeah, I think so.
So, you referenced it. Federer's on 20 Grand Slams at the age of 38. Nadal is on 19 Grand Slams with the French Open to come. And Djokovic is on 17 Grand Slams, age 32, the youngest of the three. So if we were to put our best guess forward, Nadal takes the French this year, moves to 20 alongside Federer. Federer at 38 stays on 20. Nadal stays on 20. Djokovic wins the other two this year, wins the Australian this time next year, and so we'll be sitting here in...
There's a lot of ifs there for all of them, isn't there?
We'll be sitting here in 2021 with Federer on 20, Nadal on 20, and Djokovic winning 3 more on 20. 20 apiece, all 60 divided up equally between the three. What odds?
I don't think Djokovic is going to win...
3 of the next 4?
No. I just think it's too big an ask with the guys coming up behind, as well as the guys there, plus, you know, injury and all that. But he's got a great chance. And what is really scary about all that is that Federer is probably the 3rd best ever. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's mad. I think so. Look, Federer is where he is. Nadal's probably due a loss with the French. You know, he's won it 12 times, even though, yes, he's the obvious favourite and all. And all that, and he can probably put himself a little bit on ice for the next 3 months and just manage his training and get ready for the French and try and get to that 20. But team is right there. I would have thought he's ahead of the pack, maybe on a par with Djokovic as a challenger to Nadal at the French. And then, yes, Djokovic is probably the favourite for the last 2, but he's got a lot of work to do, and he's 32. Yeah, he looks like he's got another 2 or 3 years in him of that same level as what he has now, and you would have thought then it'll start to dip. But yeah, there's still an awful lot to play for, and Nadal is still right there. So, but isn't it scary to think that Federer might be the third in that grouping of slams accumulated?
Scary. It's a dreadful thought.
Yeah, it is, because definitely the most popular ever, and winning records. You know, I think Djokovic and Nadal both have winning records against Federer. So each way you dice it, it kind of looks like Federer at the end of the day in 2 years' time might be seen as number 3 in terms of the black and white numbers.
You made a point the last time we were talking pre-Australian Open this year, and it was a very good one, and something similar has happened in golf as well, which is vaguely comparable given there are 4 majors in golf, 4 Grand Slams in tennis, that over the last 20, 30 years, the importance of those Grand Slam events has grown and grown and grown exponentially, and almost the regular ATP Tour type things have just dwindled. Like you were saying, there's certain players who wouldn't even have travelled to Australia for the Australian Open back in the day. So is this seen as good for the game?
I think it is. Yeah, the 4 slams are what the guys are chasing now, and they want that record, and that's the only metric it seems like that they're judged on now. Whereas, as I was saying, whatever it was 2 weeks ago, that the Borgs and the McEnroes and the Connors just didn't even play Aussie, so they were only playing three of the slams, so they could only get to 12.
It's just the other 44 weeks of the year I worry about.
Yeah. I mean, a 250 or a 500 ATP event now, unless it's Dubai and they've gone and paid the guys, you know, an awful lot of money to come and play, you don't see them. The number 1 seed is 7, 8 in the world. Whereas Rome, you know, these Masters series, they get those big those big turnouts, but not the smaller events. So the smaller tournaments have a real struggle to get a good field, and have to pay appearance fees to these guys. So that's one of the complaints that a lot of the lower ranked guys have, is that there's a lot of money floating around in tennis, but you're getting a big part of the tournament organisers' pot is actually going directly to the guys just to get them to turn up at the event, and then forget about the prize money. So yeah, it's definitely something that's becoming more of a theme, that these guys are just completely peaking for the 4 tournaments.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the trend, well, it certainly continued in the men's with Djokovic winning, and the trend of first-time winners continued in the women's. So Sofia Kenin beat Garbiñe Muguruza. So she was born in Russia, and to Russian parents who moved back for her birth, I was reading, and she still has a slight accent.
I thought she was actually born in the States and then went back to Russia for a couple of years and moved back. But I agree. I picked up on the fact that she has spent in her entire life in the States and has a Russian inflection in her accent, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And there's been a few videos going around since obviously since she's won the tournament, and she was taken around a couple of the big tournaments in Miami when she was 6 and 7 with some of the big players. She was obviously already, I think she was, winning big Florida sectional events under 12 when she was 8, and kind of a real prodigy. And at the end, she had kind of the Russian accent, but so obviously she just spent a lot of time with her family and maybe homeschooled and all that kind of thing. But I think one of the interviews they said, how many hours do you play, Sofia? How many hours do you practice a day? I think she was 7 or 8 at the time. She said, I play for 3 hours every day. It's kind of scary. So it's worked out for her. The old survivorship bias, whatever they call it, where there's been a lot of work done, but she made it in the end.
She's the youngest US Grand Slam winner since Serena Williams.
Right.
I take it we don't have another Serena Williams on our hands.
I think you'd put the Coco Gauff. She's 15 and she's third round of Wimbledon at 15. She's still 15, and I think it was third round this tournament too. So she looks like she's maybe good. Yeah, I mean Sofia Kenin, I can't see her winning 7, 8 slams plus. Serena has 23, whereas Coco Gauff is sort of looking like her trajectory is looking pretty strong for a 15-year-old. What she's doing is very unusual. Yeah,
we played an interview here in the news round of the show of Gauff when she lost, and her maturity is incredible for 15.
Yeah, her composure is one of the things that really stood out to me, as well as her movement. But yeah, she's very, very mature, and I guess that's the environment she's in as well, that she would have been training, I guess, like a professional for a number of years, and as on the road with a group of an entourage who are all adults as well. So she's very grown up for her age and able for it. But they have this rule in the WTA where at a certain age, I think it's till 16, you can only play, I think it's 8 or 9 events a year, which is a great rule, because it protects people from themselves a little bit. So she's going to be managed from a scheduling perspective over the next couple of years. That wouldn't happen. I wouldn't have thought if that rule wasn't in place. So that's good to see.
This was a back and forth final. It was a good final.
It was very good. She makes a lot of balls. She's an unbelievable fighter. She covers, like, her movement, I wouldn't put it at an elite level, but she covers it very well, and she's got some variety. But yeah, no, she's another new Grand Slam champion in the women's game. It's like it's polar opposites. It's the same old story on both sides, but in completely different ways. The women, the top players are so vulnerable, and there's so much depth. The guys seem to be untouchable in the men's, and not a lot of depth. So it's which one is healthier? I don't know.
That was my next question.
Yeah, well, I think for the casual fan, they like to see the same names, and they like to see a draw that they understand. I think they switch off a bit when Muguruza Kenin in the final. Okay, where if it was a Nadal Federer, everybody kind of gets switched on to that. And this is a big one. Yeah. So that's what's so good about men's tennis at the moment, and why it's a bit worrisome over the next few years. Are we going to have this back and forth with slam finals that nobody really knows, and they can't connect with the players? So we'll have to wait and see.
What's going on in the women's game, though, is especially extreme. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. One thing that somebody was making the point over the last couple of weeks, that the seedings in the men's and the women's, there's 32 seeds now in both draws. In Grand Slams, there used to only be 16. So the number 1 seed could have played the 17th best player in the world in the first round or second round 10, 15 years ago before they brought in 32 seeds, and now the top seeds are even more protected because it's 32 seeds, so you can't play anybody inside the top 32 in the first couple of rounds. So that, they're saying, has protected the men. But then it's exactly the same on the women's side, and it hasn't. So nothing is quite explaining it, because again, you could talk a little bit last time about 5 sets for the men, 3 sets for the women. There's more chance for upsets in the women, but then Serena's gone and accumulated 23 slams along all that, and so I think it's just a unique time with the top 3 guys just being so far ahead, and it might revert to type again in another 5 years or so.
Because since the start of 06, just to put the comparison in numerical terms then, since the start of 2006, there have been just 7 different male Grand Slam winners. Obviously, the big 4 loom large. There's just 3 other guys, basically, since 06. We're talking about a long period of time here. And over the same period, 25 women have become Grand Slam champions.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that these 3 guys are so special, and we should try and enjoy it.
I did want to ask you before we wrap up about Maria Sharapova. We were going to do that before the tournament. We just ran out of time, so I said we'd come back to it. So Sharapova, obviously, everybody burst on the scene. 36 career titles, 5 Grand Slams. Her Wimbledon title in 04 immediately established her as a superstar. Commercially massively attractive to big global companies, blue chip companies. US Open in 06, Australian Open 08, the French Open in 12 and 14, and then the meldonium scandal hit. So it turned out she'd been taking meldonium for a long time, and then that was off the list, and she was subsequently banned, and she made her comeback. She's done nothing really since. She's still only 32, and she bowed out of the Australian Open this year in quick fashion. Her highest ranking since the comeback was 21 in the world in 2018. But I mean, if you look at her best finishes, US Open 4th round in 2017. In 2019, it was Australian Open 4th round, French didn't compete, Wimbledon 1st round, US Open 1st round, Australian Open 1st round this year. I know there's a shoulder issue.
Well, four shoulder surgeries, which is hard to say, but 4 shoulder surgeries over the last number of years hasn't helped, and she's definitely lost a bit on her serve. And I think the ban, whatever it was, I think it was 15 months in the end. I think it was 2 years to 18 to 15. So, yeah, I think it's mentally, I think she's struggling with the where she's seen now and her legacy, and she was...
Is she? Well, that was the question, because I wanted to ask about that. So the surgeries obviously are significant. But the casual observer could look at it and say, well, the meldonium...
She's off the good stuff now,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, she won Wimbledon at 17, so, like, she was a Grand Slam winner. I doubt she was on something then. Like, she was... her pedigree was always there. Yeah, like the meldonium thing, I guess, just to refresh people, because people probably half remember it. Yeah. So this was not really available outside the Eastern Europe, and she was taking, and a load of Russian athletes were taking this drug for a number of years.
It's famously been given to the Russian army to keep them alert and awake long hours.
And it increases oxygen flow to the blood, game on, right, for a tennis player. So she was taking this for 10 years and saying it was, diabetes and a family history of diabetes and all that. So she was taking it, and WADA, whoever it was, put it on the ban list and sent out emails and literature, I guess, to all the players about the fact that this was coming it was going to be banned on January the 1st, 2016. So it was legal on December 31st, 2015, January the 1st, 2016, you take it and you're in big trouble. Yeah, at the Australian Open 2016, she got tested, and obviously it came up that she was on it. She called a big press conference. Nobody knew what the press conference was about. I've been tested positive for drugs. So huge fallout, lots of commentary about it back and forth. She was obviously cynically, I guess, taking this drug for a number of years to improve her performance, and then just for whatever reason, whether it was her or her people, didn't latch on to the fact that this was getting banned.
Yes.
because I can't see any other explanation for it.
It seems that way. It seems that
just
one
wouldn't
just
be worth it for her.
it fell through the net.
Yeah.
But we should say as well, though, the general consensus at the time from the medical profession was that it was extremely unusual that you would be on meldonium for 10 years.
Right.
It was a fair old stint to be taking your meldonium.
Yeah.
Maybe potentially not best practice.
Yeah, and I think that there was some evidence that there were spikes in her usage before big tournaments, and I think even before she played Serena Williams on a few occasions, it was that specific. So
that's her ruined in most people's eyes.
Yeah, it is. She'll never recover from that, I don't think. And I think that's what's playing on as she tracks back from the pan and all that. So her heart's probably not quite in it, and she's struggling, I would have thought, mentally with what tennis is, where it fits. And
because she was ballsy enough when it first emerged, and I've done nothing wrong here, but she can't be immune from the fall from grace. Yeah,
I think so, and I think that it's probably as the weeks and months go by and she comes back on the tour and it doesn't go very well, she's probably looking at it going, well, I'm Maria Sharapova. Oh, wasn't she on drugs for years? To the casual sports fan around the world. And probably in her own head, I'm sure she's
and some of her competitors
self-edited the whole thing in her mind, and probably thinks, well, I did it because this and that's a legitimate reason, and nobody understands, So she's probably, I would imagine, struggling big time with the whole thing.
Because the likes of a Jeannie Bouchard came out and slammed her.
It was interesting.
Have come out.
All the Russian players stood by her. A lot of the Russian players are saying, "Oh, sure, meldonium, we all take that. It's like taking vitamins back at home. Like it's not. It's good for the heart. It's like taking aspirin, or whatever." So, and then all the other players came down on her pretty hard. But also, like, she was getting wild cards when she came back on the tour, which is just pathetic from the tour. You get banned for drug use, and then the tour gives you a helping hand to get back as quickly as possible to your ranking. I mean, and again, going back to the whole that the tournament's just trying to get the biggest names, and their ethics and their morals are compromised, trying to do that. So I think the French Open refused to give her one. The US Open gave her one and put her on a show court.
Yeah.
And I think Caroline Wozniacki was put on court 17 and complained about it rightly. So there's just a lot going on there. But she was an unbelievable player, and she didn't win those slams because she was on something. I guess that's what the one thing I would say. She obviously took this, and she was cynical, and it was unethical and wrong. But at the same time, I would look at her as still like what a phenomenal tennis player. And I remember seeing her practice in Bollettieri's. I was there for a couple of weeks when I was about 17, and she was there. She would have been about 11. And I'll never forget the work she was putting in. Again, going back a bit like the Sofia Kenin thing. The application and the work that gets done at that young an age for the really elite tennis players is scary.
I'm sure. And you see, whether it's unfortunate or not, some would say deservedly so. I never saw the 11-year-old Sharapova. I mean, I did see the 17-year-old who burst on the scene, but I can't look at her record and say, well, she did that. She would have done that without meldonium, because I don't know, and I don't actually know how powerful meldonium is. Yeah. Like, I don't know if me and you...
it doesn't. I wouldn't say it turns you into a Grand Slam champion.
I would suggest it doesn't. And yet.
Oh yeah, that's it. And that's what she understands that perception. And I think that's probably what she's struggling with. But yeah, she did a lot of work. She did a lot of work to get herself in that position to win slams. And now a little bit. Not it's all been lost, but
it's tainted.
It's big time tainted.
Because I saw Chris Everett even said on ESPN commentary, when Maria retires, I don't think there's going to be any fanfare as far as she's concerned. This is her stock.
It's a shocker, yeah, that's it, and that's one of the greats. That's the final nail in the coffin there. That quote, that sums it all up.
Yeah, that's like retire, you could drift away.
Yeah, but yeah, she would have. She would have been based in Florida from whatever 5 or 6, and I think you can only get into Bollettieri's at 8 or 9. So she was sort of waiting at the gates for 2 years, waiting to get in. And she would have spent a lot of time in LA with a coach called Robert Lansdorp, who was famously coached Pete Sampras, Tracy Austin, Lindsay Davenport, and Sharapova, 4 world number ones out of a sort of a one-court sort of a job out in LA. An unbelievable coach, and that's where her a great running forehand, and that flat penetrating ball that he taught them came from. So an incredible player, but as you say, tarnished, and reputation is never going to recover.
Yeah, I know the Meldonium doesn't teach you how to hit that running forehand. Might help you run. This is the problem.
Yeah, it'll help you get there.
Were you at a Nick Bollettieri school looking at it? Or
I went out there for 2 weeks when I was 16, and we were sent out there for a couple of weeks training. I hit with the Williams sisters. They were about 16. Well, they were the same age as me, but they were like top 20 in the world at 16. Wow. Andy Roddick would have been a kind of a good American junior at the time, but wouldn't have been not incredible at that age actually. And then I went out again for a couple of weeks when I was on the tour, just kind of for a pre-season. But yeah, an incredible place, incredible atmosphere, and still going. Nick Bollettieri, I think, is maybe 90 now and still hustling.
Come in and preview the French Open, and let's make time to talk about that, because even Agassi writes about it extensively in his book. An amazing place. Yeah, okay, great. Well, let's do that. In the meantime, Conor Niland, thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe.